We have a heartbreaking story of a former polygamous wife who has been severely abused and has been denied justice. Stay tuned for that next on Polygamy. What love is this? Our guest this time is a former plural wife and ex-member of the AUB Polygamy Group, which is also known as the All-Red Polygamy Group. She left an abusive polygamous marriage in July of 2016. She had 15 children in 19 years of marriage and has almost 8 grandchildren. Her husband, or ex-husband, Mitchell Kyle Henderson, became a bishop in the polygamy group, and after 20 years of marriage, he took a spiritual wife in 2012. Sadly, our guest was not raised in polygamy, so she basically knew nothing about what she was in for when she entered into it. She left in July of 2016 and has been in court fights ever since. She has no home. She's been abused and victimized by her husband and then re-victimized by the state of Utah and Utah County. I would like to welcome and introduce our guest, Nicole Van Tassel Henderson.
Thank you, Doris. It's an honor to be with you.
It's great to have you here. You've got a story to tell. It's a story that so many of our viewers may be shocked at, but at the same time, it's reality and it needs to be told. And I'm glad that you've got the courage to come and tell the story to
for
our
this
viewers.
opportunity.
So we're gonna do this in 2 segments, and the first segment I want to just kind of lay the foundation of your life, what happened, you know, that brought you to know your husband and why you married him and so on. And then the second show we'll talk about the abuse, what happened and what happens afterwards. So you said that you were not raised in polygamy, so you basically knew nothing about it, but you were raised in the LDS Church.
Yes, I was.
So being raised in the LDS Church, you were mentally and spiritually taught to follow the prophet.
Yep.
and a restoration that Joseph Smith was a true prophet of God. What was the difference between being raised in that LDS mentality and then going into the polygamy group mentality?
In the LDS Church, it's follow the living prophet because we have revelation that's given to us at a certain time. With the AUB and a lot of the fundamentalists, it's no, Joseph Smith restored the fullness, and we keep alive what was fully restored with no changes.
So they don't have the changes that the LDS Church frequently has. But does the current prophet in your group, in the AUB, I should say, do they have continuing revelation, new revelation?
Not that I'm aware of, and I have been gone since July of 2016.
Mm-hmm. So you would know if they had new.
I do know that with the AUB, they have, when Mark Shurtleff, the oldest state attorney general, and they were doing the crackdown on underage marriages, and Owen Allred came forth and said, you know, we will not have any brides under 18 be married. Trying to make it okay with the state.
Yeah, in fact, I remember that he promised Mark Shurtleff that he would even help facilitate any charges or anything against other groups or their own if they had them.
And over the pulpit,
interesting,
said, if there's abuse going on, please go to the rightful lawyer.
But there was abuse going on.
Yeah. And so
that was just empty promises.
So I think it was more to satisfy the state of Utah, kind of like the manifesto, where everyone has this dirty little secret of sexual abuse and underage marriages and first cousins going over state line to marry first cousins. And when they say go to, you know, the law, if you know about, you know, domestic violence, child abuse, welfare fraud, or whatever, you as a woman are so discredited and then shunned.
Absolutely.
That, and then your whole integrity is just smeared.
It is. It is. And that was during the time, too, when the FLDS was starting to be brought out, some of the things they were doing, and the Kingston group also. So the AUB was sitting there all nice and prim and perfect, and they didn't do anything wrong, you know, while these two polygamy groups were really getting investigated. Was it difficult for you to adjust your thinking from being raised LDS into the polygamy group? Did you find any difficulty doing that?
My story is unique where I was raised LDS and from a very prominent, my heritage is very prominent in the LDS church. And when I met my husband, I was 15 and he was 22, so I was a child. And immediately, and I didn't see this till I left, the isolation started where I couldn't go to school events or church events or even my high school graduation party. After graduating from high school, I couldn't attend that. And then he started saying, well, your family hates me, which they're trying to control us, which now that I've left and I've been gone, I see that that's how polygamy works, is the isolation.
The control, the isolation.
And they get you into a place where they try to break your spirit.
The conformity, they need you to conform to.
And submit.
To that, and absolute submission, absolutely, yes. So you were 15 and he was 22. Let's talk a little bit about him. Give us a little background about who he was. Where
he was a returned missionary from the LDS church, is what he told me. Needless to say, he had been living a double life, been involved with the AUB plus in the church.
So he had dual membership.
Yes.
So to speak. He was a member of the LDS Church and the AUB.
Yes.
The LDS Church obviously wouldn't have known that.
My parents did get him excommunicated while we were dating because he had brothers that were practicing polygamous, and he was teaching me about Section 132, grooming me.
Right.
And, you know, what he would say is, if you're going to marry me, you have to agree to homeschool our children, have a kid a year, live United Order, and give me sister wives.
Okay, so what did the leader of the AUB think about him holding a dual membership?
Well, Rulon Allred is the one that told his mother and father to keep their boys in and to go on missions, and then let them come back. And so a lot of them did hold dual memberships.
So he actually condoned it and told them to do that.
Yes.
Wow.
Rulon did.
That would upset the LDS Church very much if they had known that was going on.
It was pretty upsetting to me as a young 16, 17-year-old daughter of God.
Yeah.
To find out that this man I quote unquote loved really was just, and I didn't realize that at the time, but now I realized he was using me to get new blood into the group.
Which is what he threw into you after you were married, actually.
Yes.
He used that against you.
Yes, because I was a Gentile and wasn't born of the pure
Look how
bloodline.
great he was. He brought you into their exclusive kingdom of God.
But I had to be sealed to the prophet Lemoyne Jensen to be accepted.
Yeah, right. So when you got married, you were 18, he was 22.
He was 24, almost 25.
Well, he would have been, he was 22 when you met him, that's right.
Yeah.
So the polygamy group prophet actually performed the first ceremony.
Yes.
But because he wasn't legally authorized to perform marriage ceremonies later, an LDS bishop married you?
This is going to make me a little bit emotional because of what it's done to my parents. We were sealed by Owen Allred on June 20th, and then a week later on my parents' own anniversary of 19 years, we had he called it the fake marriage, where we got the legal marriage certificate. And he said we need to do it that day because they're trying to stop our marriage. And it has crushed my mom and dad to know that I hid being married for a week. And then not knowing.
After the polygamy group prophet married you. Okay. Yeah, that's and we'll probably talk about this later too, how they talk about being family oriented, but they're really so anti-family in some of the practices that they.
Well, I can say that I just delivered a wedding invitation from my 18-year-old daughter. I wasn't even listed as the mother that gave birth to her.
Is that
it's
right?
The concubine.
Oh my word.
Parents of the bride, Kyle and Katie Henderson.
So before the abuse, which we're going to talk about later, would you say that during those 19 years that you're married, would you sum it up as being happy, satisfying, miserable, content, too naive to know that you weren't happy? How would you summarize your...
Because I was so sick having babies so fast, and I had multiple health issues, which blood clots, preterm labor, the hyperemesis, feeding tubes, IVs. I was so busy having babies.
Did you get medical care for all
Yes,
that?
I delivered, and my OB doctors told Kyle she can't have any more children because it's physically going to kill her.
Uh-huh.
Because it wasn't, all of my babies were preemies.
Yeah.
And in the newborn ICU, my twins for 3 months, where I was abandoning 7 children, 12 and under at home, or going up to LD and spending an hour or two with twins.
Well, I'm grateful that you were able to get medical care. Some polygamists are not able to
Which
do that.
is sad.
Yeah.
And I have seen personally in my life, children that could have been saved or would have been okay.
Would have been okay
if they would have had the
help.
medical care.
Exactly, and that's certainly true in all of the polygamy groups. So your marriage would not have been any of those. It would have been more like you were just coping to, just kind of striving to even stay
you
alive
live to
in some
survive.
sense.
It's that
survive.
fight or survive, and then you get 7 kids that are 12 and under, and you find out you're pregnant
Again.
with twins, and and I couldn't homeschool them all. I couldn't run his business. I couldn't take care of the acreage that we had, which included animals and gardens and stuff.
So where did you live?
Eagle Mountain.
Okay.
Beautiful property. Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
Yeah. How many people? How many members are in the AUB polygamy group?
From what I understand from the last conference and stuff that I attended, there's probably about 12,000 from, Montana down to Mexico. And the numbers, they really never give us a number. It probably is probably more than that. But I'm not sure.
Yeah. We never do, and I don't think we ever will get the full numbers of any of the groups. So your husband actually did not take another plural wife for 20 years?
Yes.
Why did he wait so long?
In my heart of hearts, because I really thought, well, I'll give him a kid a year and he'll love me and not want another wife. And then he got made a bishop over a United Order, and the prophet Lemoyne Jensen came to him and said, you can't be, a bishop in an order when there's plural families, because you can't guide them if you haven't
if you're
lived
not one
the
yourself.
principle. So it was kind of an arranged marriage where Lemoyne had this girl and him meet and get married. The marriage was postponed, and from November of 2011 to February of 2012, and
Did he want to get married before that? Take another wife before that?
He tried several times.
And why didn't it happen?
What I was told by a lot of the girls, and I don't know how this is in all of the groups, was he would send me out to recruit the wives. He would find, a girl or girls that had been widowed and say, go and befriend them and bring them back. And a lot of the girls would say, we'd love to be your sister wife, but we don't want to be married to him.
Whoa. He had that good of a reputation, huh?
No comment on that.
So when he took a plural wife, it was because he was bishop, and he had to conform to the polygamy, and you can understand that. If you're going to be over polygamous, you need to be a polygamous kind of thing. I understand that. But was it with your full consent? Now, I'm moving into the law of Sarah here. Did that apply, or was that any part of your consent for him taking another wife?
You know, I think in the back of your mind when you're 15 and 16 and 17 and they're saying, well, to have me, you have to give me other wives. You know, as a young girl, I just couldn't imagine that.
Oh, you don't get it.
You don't.
That, yeah.
I was a child.
Yeah.
But I knew when he started courting this concubine, and all of a sudden I was in the hospital getting a gallbladder out, and the only thing he was doing was texting on his phone 18 hours a day with this woman, because she was older, in her 30s. Mm-hmm. And I just reached over and said, will you come sit by me? And I went to reach and touch him, and he recoiled back. And my mom was there, and it broke my mom's heart to see that he was so involved in trying to love this other woman. And because it was our 20th year anniversary in June, you know, and when we got married, he didn't believe in receptions. He didn't want honeymoons. But when he married this new girl, 2 receptions and a 8-9 day honeymoon.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
The favoritism comes in, doesn't it? So
between all used up and fresh meat.
Right, right. So back to the law of Sarah. Does the AUB follow the law of Sarah, or do they give homage to it, even though they don't practice?
No, you practice the law of Sarah. I had to be there to put her hand in his.
Okay, but that's not what the law of Sarah is.
No, but that's how they present it.
That's the way they do, yeah. And of course, putting your hand in, a lot of the polygamy groups have adopted them doing that.
Yes.
But if you don't agree, and for our viewers, perhaps who may not understand what we're talking about, Section 132 of the Mormon Doctrine and Covenants, Joseph Smith wrote the polygamy doctrine in that Section 132, and he said that the man had the right to take other wives as long as they were virgins, and that the woman, the first wife, had to give her consent before he could do that. So therefore he had to ask her, but if she didn't give her consent, then he was free to take the other wife anyway, and the first wife would be punished because she didn't give her consent, and she's the sinner, not him, for taking the wife.
Very true.
So it's a catch-22. The first wife can't win.
You can't.
Going.
And what plural marriage does is it makes men not be able to be responsible to have a relationship as a man and woman couple, because the competition goes from, let's deal with this problem to, oh, you know what, you did something wrong, I'm going to go to this other woman that will love me, and it's used as a punishment.
They play one against the other.
Yes,
and
it's a competition.
Right, it is. So a few weeks ago, we did a show about the nude temple rituals of the AUB, with the group that you're from. Were you involved in any of those nude temple rituals?
I don't know about the new ones. I went through
nude.
Oh, nude. Oh.
All that.
When I went through and took my endowments out, it was 1997, and we did have the sheet, and you were nude under the sheet, and you were touched and anointed. Right,
and that's what we call it. So what did you think of that when that happened? And would that happen during your marriage ceremony?
Yeah, well, because I had not got my endowments before I got married, we went through later on because I was a Gentile.
Right.
And
so you were new to all of this. What did you think of that?
Because I was raised LDS and I knew from my parents about how strongly temple ordinances and covenants were, I did believe in them. I didn't have any idea about what happens, and the nudity part is not actually the scary part. It's signs and tokens of how you're going to
Yeah.
disembowel and cut your throat if you break any of those.
And the AUB still does that,
Yes.
although the Mormon Temple has removed
yes.
that. The AUB still does, because they're still basic Orthodox Mormonism. One lady who told me about these rituals said that they had a separate ritual that pregnant women went
Yes,
through.
a mother's blessing.
Right. And then it was basically the same thing. You'd be nude under the
Yes.
sheet, they'd touch your areas and bless you and all of that. Did you go through that to
Oh,
yourself?
no.
You didn't do that?
No, I did not.
After the first one, that was
It
enough?
was enough. Well, and I have enough faith that if I had a child and going through just my medical history, that I didn't want any other woman touching me either. Mm-hmm. You know, I
understand what you're saying.
I mean, I
don't
was
think
naked enough having 15 kids in 19 years that I didn't need to be any more naked.
I understand. Well, so there was no pressure to go through that as a pregnant mother?
Actually, that pressure started after he married the second wife when I was pregnant with the 15th child. And the mother's blessing pressure came, and I kept saying no.
So did you get along with your sister wife? Did she
No.
live in the same home that you lived in?
We lived in the same property. She lived in an apartment that was kind of across the street from the parking lot between the main home, and then he had a shop, and up above it he had an apartment.
And that's where
So she lived on the same property, but not in the same house, because I had 13 children.
Well, that's good.
And but she came in very controlling, trying to rearrange how we had been raising our children.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the first memories I have of her was her. I'm a chef. I did go through culinary school and graduate from culinary school after I left. And I remember her trying to come in and rearrange my kitchen. And I was thinking, get out of my kitchen. That's sacred ground.
She kind of had to make a point for
Yes.
herself, and then taking her viewpoint of it. You know, she's, of course, I don't know her viewpoint, but I do know what second wives and third wives, they also feel like they have to make a place for themselves, and they all have different ways of doing it, and it can be very obtrusive and sometimes insulting.
Disrupting to a whole family situation that has been established for 20 years.
Did your husband play you one against the other much?
All the time.
All the time?
All the time.
Did he become abusive later on in the marriage, or was he at the beginning? Was he abusive to her?
I can't speak for her, but with me, the abuse started within the first couple weeks. We were married.
Oh, is that right? That
Yes.
soon? Wow.
It meant he went from Prince Charming to, we got to get another wife. And I had left my family and everything to be with him.
And you said that he kept throwing it against you that you were Gentile and all that. He also used something against you called new blood.
Yeah, well, holy blood, the holy bloodline, because the new wife was from the Jessup bloodline, which is a holy bloodline because of Joseph Lyman Jessup, was her grandfather.
A good polygamous name, yes.
Yeah. And I was from an outside group, which interestingly enough, he was not a holy bloodline from inside the group either.
But he was a man.
But he was a man.
That made it up. So he would throw things like that into you, you know, that letting you know that you were not as good, as elevated in status as he or his other wife was, because of the name.
Because of the name.
Because of the name. And so he called you a Gentile during the whole marriage, another thing that you said he threw against you.
Actually, the Gentile first came up as the first New Year's ball he took me to. And he said, don't wear a lot of makeup, don't, you need to fit in because you're a Gentile. And I came out of the bathroom and he said, insultingly, devastating to my little 17-year-old heart. Well, a little makeup's okay, and you should put a little bit on.
I want to bring up the topic of isolation, which we briefly talked about before. One lady from the FLDS that I spoke with a few years ago told me that she believes that isolation brings or breeds dictatorship.
I agree
And
with that
that's
statement.
one reason, just one of the many reasons that they do that. Did he have a dictatorship rule over you? Did the prophet of the group have dictatorship rule over the families?
You know, I know with my husband, he was judge, jury, all of it.
And you had to submit to him.
And I had to submit to him, and if I didn't, then I was punished.
Yeah. What kind of punishment?
There was a lot of things that happened. A lot of times my whole family would rearrange schedules so that we could be there with our children, because my mom and dad and my sisters, I'm the oldest of 5 girls, wanted to get to know their nieces and nephews. And we'd set up and arrange everything around him. Mm-hmm. And then at the last second, he'd switch it. And so there was, 50 other people that had to rearrange plans and stuff.
And he had the power to.
And he had the power to do it, because I wasn't strong enough to say, you know what, it's fine if you don't go. I'll just take the kids and go.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're running low on time here for this first, but we're going to be doing part 2 as well, and we'll get into more of the dynamics of your marriage. But at closing, I want to ask you a question. We've heard this many, many times from being from polygamy groups, and maybe other people have heard it too. What is your response to this comment made by many people? It's better to have part of a good man than all of a bad man.
I'd say it's just better to have a good man than any part of a bad man. And
Which is, now that's a saying that polygamous wives will
that's
use
to justify
their polygamy.
And it is used to justify your feelings, because it is taught feelings don't matter, only ordinances and covenants. So if you had bad feelings, it's your problem you have bad feelings.
Mm-hmm. And so being a polygamous wife, so being a polygamous wife and having these feelings is better because he's a good man than to live in a monogamous marriage, because all monogamous marriages are bad men, right?
No.
Isn't that kind of the attitude that statement is trying to tell you?
Which is a brainwash.
Yeah, yeah. Like there's no good men out there if you're not in polygamy.
And I can tell you, my grandfathers and my father are some of the best men I have ever known to walk this earth.
And they were not the model that you ended up having as a husband. I mean, your husband wasn't the model that your grandparents, father and grandparents. Well, this is the end. We're out of time for part 1, and we are going to part 2 and talk about Nicole's story as she talks about the abuse, complete with pictures of some of the bruises that she received and how the court system failed to protect her and actually helped him. So we'll see you next time on Polygamy, What Love Is This?